For this module of Alcon Experience Academy, I will be covering on different aspects of posterior capsular rent management. Basically, I have divided this into two parts. One on the basic concepts, and secondly on some advanced tips on the management of this situation. The immediate goals in management of posterior capsular rent involves extraction of all of the nucleus in toto, removal of cortex and epinucleus to the maximum extent possible, doing an adequate anterior vitrectomy so that there is no vitreous in the anterior chamber, preserve residual cortical capsular support to the extent possible, whether it is in the posterior capsule or the rim of the anterior capsule, and if at all possible, implant an intraocular lens. In case the case has not gone too well, intraocular lens implantation can always be done as a secondary procedure. Let me go on to a very simple case which I did almost 15 years back. As you can see over here, the nucleus, the cortical matter is already out, but we have a large rent over here and the capsular rhexis margin is intact. And what we are going to be doing here is to do a adequate anterior vitrectomy where the irrigation cannula and the vitrector are separated from each other. As you can see, it's a 20 gauge vitrector, but the basic principles have not changed. You don't want to use a coaxial vitrectomy machine simply because that would cause too much of hydration of the vitreous, and at that point of time we were not using any triamcinolone acetate, but just making sure that the edges of the rhexis as well as the pupil remain round. That's viscoelastic being injected in the sulcus. Then subsequently the 3-piece intraocular lens is being implanted in the sulcus. Whenever it's a sulcus implantation, you have to revert to a 3-piece intraocular lens because the large haptics of the single piece would cause a significant amount of inflammation, propensity for raise in intraocular pressure and pigment dispersal. This is the haptic of the intraocular lens being rotated into position. You can see a significant amount of viscoelastic that's there behind the lens, and this needs to be removed before we create an optic capture. That's gently nudging the with the aspiration cannula the optics of the intraocular lens to create a adequate overlap of the rhexis margin, creating an optic capture. That's a few strands of the vitreous that's being removed, and once you do this, there is no need for any intraocular lens power adjustment, simply because the lens has been implanted right where it belongs, that is in the capsular bag. And as you can see over here, this is the rent with which we started out with. At the end of the procedure, this is the intraocular lens, the 6 mm optic being nicely overlapped by the 5 mm capsular rhexis margin, and it's quite a stable lens that we have over here. What you see, this is a picture which has been taken about 14 years later, and as you can see, it's an extremely stable lens, and the optical axis is absolutely clear, and this is amenable with a totally normal visual acuity. So even though there was an incident, properly managed, you can end up with absolutely appropriate visual acuity which lasts the patient for the entire lifetime. Another tip I want to mention here is about the timing of withdrawal of the irrigation. As you can see here, when I am polishing the posterior capsule, there is a small rent over here that occurs. When I remove the aspiration cannula alone, still keep the irrigation flowing, you would find that it's flapping around over here, but then there is no extension that occurs. But the moment, without injecting the viscoelastic, the moment I remove the irrigation, immediately the anterior vitreous face moves forward, and you can see there is a significant extension of the rent that has happened. Fortunately, still there is no escape of the vitreous into the anterior chamber. This could have been completely avoided if there was no sudden withdrawal of the irrigation cannula without filling the anterior chamber with the dispersive viscoelastic preferably. This is again a fairly old video. I am using these videos just to drive home some basic points which are taken for granted today. If you have a PCR, still if there is you can handle it adequately. Here I am doing a certain amount of polishing of the posterior capsule, and you can see a significant PC rent that has happened over here, but still in the central area there is an intact posterior capsule. So here what we are going to do is original plan was to inject a single piece intraocular lens. We are going to stick to it. You can see as far as the irrigation cannula is there is no extension of the PC rent. We fill in the anterior chamber with a dispersive viscoelastic and stick to the plan of injecting a single piece intraocular lens in the bag. In these cases, unlike conventional rotation of the intraocular lens that you do, here you are just going to nudge the haptics into place in such a way that there is no significant rotation that's involved, and you keep the haptics of this lens completely away from the area of the PC rent. Thus the trailing haptic being nudged into the capsular bag. Then subsequently there would be a little bit of rotation of the anterior capsule, the leading haptic, but you can see now the intraocular lens is entirely in the capsular bag. There is a rent over here, but still there is enough amount of posterior capsular support. There is a good low overlap of the rhexis margin onto the intraocular lens optic, and this is even before the irrigation cannula is removed. I am hydrating the wounds in such a manner that the anterior chamber remains quite stable, and there is no propensity for the optics of the lens to move forward. Going on to another situation, as you can see over here, it's a significant posterior polar cataract, and as we all know, these are the situations where we most often have the risk of a posterior capsular rent occurring. And in this case, I am going to be making a 5 mm rhexis. Whenever there is a risk of posterior capsular rent, it's a good idea to make a 4.5 to 5 mm rhexis, simply because that gives you enough anterior rhexis rim to create a good optic capture in case it becomes necessary. As you can see here, I am going to be doing a phaco stop and chop. A single trench is being created right in the center. I did a hydro delamination, no hydro dissection was done. It's a fairly deep trench I am making. You would see a transparent area over there, but fortunately that's not gone through and through the posterior capsule. As you would see in the subsequent part of the video, I am separating the two halves of the nucleus, but now that I have debulked the nucleus, there is enough space and the capsule bag is no longer under tension. So I am rotating the hemisegment of the nucleus and gently removing it using very little power, and that's again the second segment is being addressed. And right till now the posterior capsule is quite intact. It is only at this phase when I am doing a little bit of polishing, you see this small circumscribed rent that is occurring. In case it was necessary, I could have gone ahead and converted it into a posterior capsular rhexis, but since it's already a fairly punched out hole, all I do is to, in this case I've used cohesive viscoelastic so as to get adequate space, form the capsular bag, and then you stick on to the plan of injecting a single piece intraocular lens. As you can see, there has been a little bit of extension of the rent that was initially created, but still there is adequate amount of capsular bag support that is over there, and that's you can see it's well situated in within the rhexis margin. And once you use a Vexel sponge at the incisions and there is no distortion of the pupillary margin or the rhexis margin, that tells you there is no vitreous in the anterior chamber, and this lens is going to remain quite stable right through the lifetime of the patient. As far as now we are going to come over to certain settings where anterior vitrectomy is going to be done, and for this I would like to emphasize that you use the maximum cut rate possible. Nowadays I am routinely using a Centurion machine, and with the software upgrade what's possible with the machine is up to 5000 cuts per second, and you use a very modest IOP of 30 millimeters and vacuum at 200 and aspiration flow rate of 20. So basically low parameters as far as all the rest of it is concerned, but the cut rate is kept at its maximum. And most importantly, you have a choice of having it as either IA cut or cut IA. Basically when you have this cut IA, in foot position 1 you are getting only irrigation, foot position 2 you are getting cutting, and foot position 3 you get aspiration. So basically you want to cut the vitreous strands and subsequently aspirate. But if you are using the vitrectomy probe for removing cortical matter after removing the vitreous, in that case you would use what's called IA cut mode, where it's irrigation in foot position 1, aspiration of the cortex, and in case it's necessary, cut in the foot position 3. Suffice it to say that when you are going to essentially removing vitreous, it has to be cut IA, where in foot position 2 you get cut, and aspiration in foot position 3. So coming over to another situation, over here you see that the last fragment removal, there's sudden upthrust and you get a significant rent over here. It's a fairly large rent, and you can see that the vitreous is prolapsing into the anterior chamber, and you can see that's a large punched out lesion, the vitreous flowing into the anterior chamber, and that's the irrigation cannula which is there in the kept in the anterior chamber, and the vitrector goes just behind the plane of the posterior capsule, does an adequate anterior vitrectomy. Once I am sure there is no vitreous in the anterior chamber, then a single piece lens is implanted in the capsular bag. You could see that in spite of getting a significant posterior capsular rent and the anterior vitrectomy being necessary, still because adequate support as far as the posterior capsule is available, I am able to go ahead and implant a single piece intraocular lens in the bag as was planned. There are some cortical strands over here, but I would rather let them be, because that's going to get absorbed over time. You can see the fairly large rent over there, but still I am able to implant the intraocular lens in the bag with an adequate overlap of the rhexis margin. The last of the situations I am going to be dealing with in this particular segment, that's a large rent over there, and in this case it's a good idea to go ahead and use triamcinolone acetate, because I want the vitreous strands to be stained. These days, any case of which requires anterior vitrectomy, I always use tricort, but because that strains the vitreous strands quite well and makes them stand out. I am removing all the cortex that's possible. It's usually 1 in 10 dilution of the triamcinolone acetate that's used, and immediately you find that the vitreous strands get very nicely delineated, and you are able to remove the vitreous more completely than what's possible without the usage of this particular adjunct. Of course, some amount of triamcinolone acetate might remain. Usually that helps in controlling the inflammation that some of these cases are associated with, but you should be cognizant of the fact that there could be an intraocular pressure rise, so the pressure needs to be checked over a period of a month or so subsequent to the usage of this. That sort of brings us to this preliminary introduction to the basic concepts of the management of posterior capsular rent. In my next segment, I will be dealing with certain other advanced steps that you could take when you are faced with this situation. Thank you so much for your kind attention.